Well, this afternoon, I would just like to finish finish looking at the information that we have been looking at since these meetings started. Mostly, the presentation this evening will consist of looking at news articles and clippings to support what I tried to say yesterday and the day before. And I know that one or two people are here who were not here during the previous presentations, so I just want to give a quick review of the main points. What we tried to do on the first night is to show that there are some aspects of our understanding of the beast in the book of Revelation that perhaps need to be considered, that have not been emphasized before. And one of these aspects that I really tried to bring out was that in its final manifestation, the beast, when it appears the final time, is said to be the beast from the bottomless pit. And I suggested that when you look at the evidence, this suggests that this beast is a godless power. And I even suggested that it seems to be an atheistic power. Of course, when you look at prophecy, future prophecy, we are unwise to set anything in concrete. Yes. It's wise to recognize that we're prone to make mistakes, we human beings. But at the same time, we should not overlook the fact that God wants us to understand. And so we need to weigh everything. So that's what we looked at the first night. And my main emphasis was that this beast is a godless power, and it cannot be a religious power, because it destroys the woman Babylon, that we understand to represent false religion, and it also attacks God's people, which represents true religion. So the beast itself is not one of these Christianized powers, because it attacks everything religious. And the description of this entity, when you compare it with what we understand of Europe, it seems to suggest it is a godless, atheistic power. And this is exactly what we see developing on the European continent. Now, the next day, yesterday, I tried to show that atheism and godlessness is associated in the Bible with a particular practice. And this practice, according to Romans chapter 1, and according to what we saw happening in the civilizations of Sodom and the antediluvian world, this particular practice is homosexuality. And the suggestion that we find in the Bible, particularly in Romans chapter 1, is that when people, when nations, when civilizations reject the knowledge of God, one of the practices that develops in that civilization, it's emphasized there in Romans chapter 1, is that women begin to burn with lust for one another and men with lust for one another. And it was strikingly seen in Sodom and in the antediluvian world, and also we see it happening in our world today in an unprecedented way. Now, there are certain little connections also that I tried to make, one of which is that when you look at the third angel's message, I don't know how convincing this is to all of you, but for me, that is a very startling bit of evidence. I don't know how nobody ever saw it before. When I saw it, it really hit me like a ton of bricks that the third angel's message, if language means anything, it is pointing to Sodom and Gomorrah. The parallel between that third angel's message and the destruction of Sodom is so striking that, as far as I'm concerned, it is past coincidence. Whoever inspired the book of Revelation designed the third angel's message to point to Sodom and Gomorrah. Yeah. I believe this. Yeah. It's even more striking when you see that Jesus said that the days of Lot and the days of Noah were illustrations of the end of time. You see that Jude says that Sodom and Gomorrah was the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah was an example. An example of what? Jesus tells us, an example of the end of the world. So look at the world today. When you say Sodom and Gomorrah, you know what the homosexuals say? They say that what happened in Sodom and Gomorrah, what was really wrong, was because they tried to rape the angels. They said there was nothing wrong with the homosexual practice. It was because they were inhospitable. Amazing how people can twist the Bible to make it say what they want it to say. But you and I don't have any such illusions. We know the problem with Sodom and Gomorrah was that this unholy practice, this unwholesome practice, had become so sanitized and accepted and widespread that God saw the only thing he could do was to wipe out that civilization. Now, somebody said to me, somebody wrote me an email and said, why are you making such a fuss about this thing? Because every sin is just a sin. And the person said, besides, we are Christians and the world has to do what it has to do, but we don't need to be concerned if it doesn't affect us personally, because we are still free to serve God. And I agree. But it's strange that the same person is all up in arms about what is happening every time there seems to be a suggestion that the Pope wants to bring us under law. He's up in arms. And I'm saying you're still free to worship on the Sabbath. Why does it bother you? The same principle. The point is, we Christians, there are certain things that affect and infect the society in which we live. What do we do when sin appears? What do you do when somebody is a thief or a liar or a murderer or a fornicator? Is it your duty to identify sin? What about if in society sin becomes widely accepted and the very definition of sin is changing? Do you as a Christian have any duty to enlighten people? Yeah. We're not here just to concern ourselves about our salvation. This is why when Sunday laws are passed, or Sabbath laws, because to be honest, Sunday laws have been here for a long time. And if they say don't work on Sunday, I won't work. The problem would be a Sabbath law. If they pass a law that I can't worship on Sabbath, then it would be a problem. So if and when Sabbath laws are passed, it's my duty to enlighten the population about what it means. It's my duty to make men understand that here is barefaced open rebellion against the God of heaven, being institutionalized by governments. Then how can it be that something that is exactly the same principle, an offense against God that God has stated plainly his opinion about, how can it be that it is not my business? It's not my business to make war. It's not my business to go out and try to use violent means to stop it. I don't even believe we can use political means to stop it, but certainly to inform people what it means, to show people that this is an indication of the end of the planet. Amen. I believe it means this. There has never been a time in the history of the planet when something like this, so blatantly wrong, how could it be that something so clearly wrong is so accepted by everybody? It just doesn't make sense. My mind can't grasp how such a paradoxical thing can be taking place. But it is. And it is, to my mind, a clear indication of the end of the world. If you don't believe that we are at the end, brothers, I hope you can look at this and think about it, because it signifies the end of the age, the end of the world. Jesus is coming soon. And like I said on the first night, the end of the world only comes once. You have never seen it before. You will never see it again. When it comes, you can't afford to miss it. You can't afford to be wrong about the signs and the marks, because the Bible says that men will be eating and drinking and going about their business, and they will say all things continue as they were from the beginning of the creation. How do you know it is different? Because you have your eyes open to the signs of the time, because you are listening to Christ, and because when people say this is just normalcy, you hear something different because you are listening to what Christ is saying. Amen. And I believe we are at that place in time where we really need to be aware that this is it. So we will leave these meetings with the question in our minds, what shall we do? And I hope we can find an answer that comes from the Lord. Now, what I'm going to do this evening is simply I've collected some news clippings. Probably some of these things, those of us who have been aware of what is happening, you have seen some of these things before. But I've tried to put them together in one place so we can get a sense of the overall size of what is happening. So I'm just going to go through and I'll make comments as we go along. The progress of the homosexual agenda. Here is an article that says that in Ireland there's going to be a referendum as to whether or not they should have gay marriage. It's interesting because Ireland is a Catholic country, and you know that in Catholic countries the morality is of a certain level. For a place like Ireland to be now discussing this is an indication of the time. New Zealand becomes the first country in Asia, in the Asia Pacific, to legalize same-sex marriage. This was like about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And you should know that immediately 1,000 Australians are planning to go over to New Zealand to get married. 1,000 Australian same-sex couples. And you know, it was interesting when you read the comments underneath the article, because some Australians were saying they were ashamed that New Zealand beat them to it. I read one comment where one New Zealander said, "There has never been a time in my life when I've been so proud to be a New Zealander." Because New Zealand has joined the fray in defying the God of heaven. And you're proud to be a New Zealander. This really hit me hard. Because when you think of Africa, you think of warriors, you think of strong men. Here, the first traditional gay wedding in South Africa. Well, let's come to America, because this is where it really comes close to us. The president and the nation have evolved on same-sex marriage. I have a news clip from CNN or Fox I wanted to show you, because it shows you President Obama 1 year ago, and he says, "I think marriage should be between a man and a woman." Then somewhere midway through the year, you hear him saying again, "Well, my thoughts are constantly evolving on this matter." And then somewhere near the beginning of this year, you hear him saying, "Our fight is not over till our gay brothers and sisters have the same equal rights to marriage as the rest of us." So in 1 year, he has undergone a complete revolution. But here are some of the headlines from the newspapers. The nation and the president have evolved. Mr. Obama says there's no way to avoid the gay marriage case. And then he says, "If I were on the Supreme Court, I'd defend same-sex marriage." And finally, it says that the Obama administration joins the legal fight against California gay marriage ban. You know that in California, Proposition 8, which bans gay marriage, and now it became a nationwide issue, and then the Supreme Court is going to look at the issue. And the hope that many people have is that the Supreme Court will make a ruling that will affect not just California but the entire nation. And based on what is happening in the world and among politicians, everybody's anticipating that America is going to be the 15th country in the world to legalize homosexual marriage. The reason why it is interesting is because America is prophetically significant. America, most of us believe, maybe all of us, that America was raised up by God to be a bastion of religious freedom and to be a bulwark in this planet of, well, not Christianity in the way we understand it, but America was used to protect and defend certain religious principles. We see America as the last bulwark, and when America goes down, we believe it is the end. Well, on this matter of defiance of the God of heaven, I believe America is about to go down. All the signs are there. President Clinton, ex-President Clinton, in 1999, Mr. Clinton signed a bill that defines marriage as exclusively between a man and a woman. It's referred to as DOMA, the Definition of Marriage Act. Yeah, definition of marriage. A few weeks ago, he joined Mr. Obama and urged the Supreme Court to overturn the bill that he himself signed into law. He says he made a mistake. Because one thing I've discovered about politicians is that what moves them is public opinion. Public opinion. I don't know if I'm being too general, but I think it's fairly reasonable to say that rarely you find a politician who goes into office because he wants to help the people. He wants to help himself. You don't, if you think I'm being too general, well, fine. But I've had a lot of experience with politicians in Jamaica. And I'm telling you, you don't go into that kind of arena and you don't behave the way they behave because they want to help people. It's a way of advancing and promoting yourself in the world. And whichever way the wind blows is the way these people blow. Here you find a few years later he's asking the court to overturn the law that he passed. And then they started dropping like flies. All of a sudden, here this man is Republican. They are the conservatives. Is that right? I'm not so familiar with the politics, but I think Democrats are the liberals. Right. Republicans are the conservatives. So the Republicans were generally against homosexual marriage, and the Democrats with Mr. Obama at the head were all for it. And suddenly, in the space of about 2 or 3 weeks, the Republicans just started dropping like flies. Senator Rob Portman found out he has a gay son. Now he supports same-sex marriage. Hillary Clinton, well, she was a Democrat, but she came out shortly after, announced her support for gay marriage. Senator McCaskill announces gay marriage support. All of these articles I found within the space of a few days. Senator Casey is the latest Democrat to embrace gay marriage. And then I was mortified to find out the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, comes out and argues that there should be same-sex marriage. The Definition of Marriage Act perpetuates a social hierarchy biased against gays. All of this in the space of a few brief weeks, where suddenly the opinion of the entire nation is shifting towards acceptance of this for some strange reason that I couldn't quite fathom. Here, the Morning Plum, I think this is a newspaper, it says, "Wake up Republicans, gay marriage is on the march." And the message is, if Republicans don't get on the bandwagon, it's going to be a long, long time before they ever win another election. That's the message that is coming out. Here, this highlighted part, it says, "When it comes to full equality for gay and lesbian Americans, it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when." They seem pretty certain. This was a photo that goes with the following article, but here it says that among those urging the court to strike down the ban on are some familiar names like Google, Apple, Facebook, JetBlue, and Starbucks. In fact, there are over 200 of these big companies that signed a brief with the court urging the court to change this Definition of Marriage Act, to strike it down. In other words, all the big companies in America are in favor of same-sex marriage. What I'm trying to say to you is that the mood and the spirit is a strange one, because I believe America to be still predominantly Christian. I think from what I heard, the percentage of atheists here is something like 14%. The percentage of homosexuals is something like 3%. Combine them, well, most atheists overlap with homosexuals, but even if you put them as two exclusive groups and combine them, you get 15% of the population. That is changing the nation in the face of all the people here who don't agree. How can that be possible? I don't know. But it happens because these people pump money. I'm sorry we didn't have the opportunity to show some video, because on one of these videos it shows that the man who founded Quark Express, Tom Gill, is a homosexual. He has resigned from being the chairman of that company, but he's now pumping millions into the political arena to get Democrats voted into positions, and of course they reward him afterwards by making laws to support the gay agenda. So this is probably why this thing is taking over like this, because a lot of money is being pumped into it, and that's a language of the age, money. And you might have your opinion and you might argue and you might quarrel, but money is what does the talking. And maybe it has something to do with the number of the beast, the amount of gold that Solomon gathered in 1 year. The Boy Scouts. Yeah, I guess from now on, none of you can say, no Christian parent can allow his child to be a member of the Boy Scouts. Ever since it started, it was a part of the policy that if you were openly homosexual, then you were out. If it was known you were homosexual. And of course you can understand why. I'm going to show you why this is so significant in just a moment. But now the pressure is on the Boy Scouts and they've had to back off. Now they're going to allow openly gay people to become members of the Boy Scouts. So when these boys go off to camp in the woods or go on their business, it's just like girls and boys together going out in terms of what kind of moral atmosphere might exist. And that is what they were always trying to safeguard against. Now that is down. And of course Time magazine and all the news agencies have already made up their mind that it's over and it's done with. The court has not yet passed the law and has not yet made up its mind, and I think it will be June before you have the final decision. Is that right? It will be June before you have the final decision, but already they've made up their mind. How gay marriage already won according to Time magazine. They're probably right. And they give some reasons for why this is taking place. Here's the answer. Television, Schweitzer wrote, it's the greatest socializing tool of all times. Gays are portrayed in all kinds of shows in a positive light, from Law and Order to CSI. They are shown as people who just want to live their lives. And that's one of the ways that Satan works. I'm going to tell you, you have heard it said that no matter how ugly a person is, you look at them long enough, they start to look better. But my father taught me a verse from Alexander Pope, and it sticks in my mind. I'm going to read it again at the end, but it says this. Vice is a monster of such fearful mien, M-E-I-N, it means face, as to be hated, it needs but to be seen. But seen too oft, familiar with her face, we first endure, then we pity, then embrace. It's a principle of life. Hang around the nastiest thing too long and it becomes commonplace. You first tolerate it, then it doesn't look so bad to you, and finally you embrace it. And this is what is happening here. It's in your face. Those who watch TV, even in Jamaica now, they have an advertisement that has a man dressed up like a woman, and the subtle message is coming across. I remember when they came out with this movie, Brokeback Mountain, and it was so disgusting, the very thought. Two homosexual cowboys. But what have they done? They have taken two macho images, two homosexual cowboys, and they presented a movie. I never had the misfortune of watching it, but I've read some of the reviews that people, it's about two cowboys who fall in love with each other. I don't know the end of it, but people went by the millions to see this abomination, and little by little your attitude and your thinking begins to change, and what is at first abhorrent gradually becomes normal. And that is one of the indicators of the end of the age. When the planet reaches a place that evil can no longer be recognized because it is so commonplace and so familiar to the people, what can God do? If you cannot say to a man, sin is sin, how does he know that he needs righteousness? How does he know that he needs Christ? There is hope when I can say to you, brother, stealing is wrong. You say, I know I'm a thief. I need Christ. I need help. When you say to a man, brother, homosexuality is wrong. You bigot. You homophobe. There's nothing wrong with it. You are the person who has something wrong with you. And if you don't change your attitude, we're going to get you arrested and ridden out of town on a broom. And that's the place that the world has come to. And this is why it's inevitable. The only way of stopping what is happening is the return of Christ. Jesus is going to put a stop to it. Now I know that something else might happen which is equally abominable. Our eyes are open and we are looking to see. Somebody suggested to me, well, you know, I think there's going to be a religious backlash And they are going to sweep away this whole thing, and a religious system is going to come into place along with the Sunday laws. All right? We're open to that possibility. But I'm saying that regardless of what happens, the reality, I don't know. I'm not sure. Right? I know that the only thing that can cause a return of the religious fervor to the planet, it has to be something like the appearance of Satan on this world as Jesus Christ. You know, we expect this, right? But that's the only thing that can do it. I'm going to tell you, if San Francisco sinks tomorrow morning, the atheists will not turn from atheism. Because they've already assigned all of these things to natural phenomena. They can explain everything scientifically. They can tell you why it happens, and they have already made up their mind that if there's a God, he's a sadistic person to allow these things to happen. So they have made up their minds. When you look at when Christopher Hitchens was dying, he says, don't come to talk to me about God. Don't expect any deathbed confession. I know there is no God. And he went down like that. It's a breed of atheists that we are dealing with today who have a different mood and spirit than anything we have seen before. The influence of the evolutionary teaching for the past 150 years has infected society so much that people really somehow seem to have accepted it truly in their innermost beings. The madness and the mayhem that we see happening in society, yes, some of it is being orchestrated by sinister forces. Conspiracy theorists are right in some of these things, right? But it's not only this. There is a lunacy that has infected the human mind, because when God goes, there's no reason for restraint. I think I'm a logical person, and if I was not a Christian, if I didn't believe in a God, I'd be one of the biggest criminals on the planet. You couldn't tell me that I'm wrong. Why are you going to tell me that I'm wrong? Because you believe so? Look here, I'm a product of evolution. I came up from slime. Don't tell me about morality. Just because you think so, the only morality you can tell me is, we're going to catch you and hang you. That might mean something to me, but don't tell me it's right because you think it's right. That's logical thinking if there's no God. If there's no God, it's the law of the jungle, like the lions and the hyenas and the dogs. The only restraint is the threat of punishment. And this is why these poor, hopeless young people take a gun and go to school and blow out the brains of their compatriots and then end up blowing out their own brains. What's the point? Live 60 more years and go down into utter, pitiless, meaningless darkness? Might as well put an end to it now. And that's where the planet has gone. And so hedonism, morality has taken over. Hedonism, immorality has taken over. Hedonism is a name of the game. So homosexuality is just normal if there's no God. And that is what is happening to this planet, why God has to put an end to it. When God ended the antediluvian world, it was because the people's mind had reached a place where God's Spirit could not get through anymore, because they had come to sanitize evil to the place where it was perfectly all right to do any abomination. This is where this planet has almost reached. And this universal acceptance of this thing is one of the strong indicators. Let me move past that one. That's not really very significant. But it says, everything you need to know about gay marriage in 2 numbers, right? The average age of today's Supreme Court justice is 68. Support for gay marriage among Americans under 30 is 81%. Okay? What they are saying is that you want to know the state of the nation. The judges are being asked to make this decision, but the average age is 68. But it says, as far as popular opinion goes, under the age of 30, 81% of your country people are in favor of homosexual marriage. 81%. You have 21% sane people under 30. 19. That's incredible. And that comes from indoctrination and pounding at these young people over and over. They meet. I mean, we talked to a girl down in Tennessee, Christian family, Adventist, but she's going to music school. And she came to ask after we did this presentation, how should I respond? She says, my school is packed with homosexuals. Most of them are my friends. How am I to relate to them? We had to give her some discreet counsel, but the point is, it's all around her. And in so much that for her, as a Christian young lady growing up with Christian principles, it has become normal and commonplace. When we made this presentation, it kind of shocked her, startled her, because it never occurred to her before that she was in this polluted atmosphere, because it's so normal. And that is a place, that is why, if God does not do something, morality will have no meaning anymore. Now, as of April 2013, 11 countries, Argentina, Belgium, Canada, Denmark, Iceland, Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, Spain, South Africa, and Sweden, and several subnational jurisdictions, parts of Brazil, Mexico, Scotland, Australia, and the United States, allow same-sex couples to marry. Bills allowing legal recognition of same-sex marriage have been proposed and are pending or have passed at least one legislative house in Andorra, Colombia, Finland, Germany, Ireland, Luxembourg, Nepal, Taiwan, and the United States. The United Kingdom. Sorry, I got that from Wikipedia. But since that time, France, Uruguay, and New Zealand have since passed laws legalizing same-sex marriage, now making the number of countries 13. Look at that list of countries, and you will find that of those 13, I believe 9 of them or 10 of them are from Europe. A couple of them from South America, and of course New Zealand is from the South Pacific. So it emphasizes the point that the continent that is foremost in promoting this is Europe, the continent that we have identified as the seat of the beast power is at the heart of this. The other great entity that remains is the United States, and the United States is about to go down. We'll see what happens in June. If it doesn't happen, I shall be terrifically surprised.
It's going to be overturned.
Yeah, because it will be overturned eventually. But the mood is in the world, and there are dramatic social changes coming. People have recognized what it means, and the news commentators say it could set the stage for dramatic societal changes. It's not going to look the same in a short while. They say marriage looks different now. In what way? Different instead of somebody being wrong. Gay marriage gains support. Now, you understand the implications, right? At first, when somebody was caught in this practice, everybody knew he was wrong. Now they have so redefined the world and the thinking of people that when somebody is now a homosexual, it's just a different kind of human being. Instead of homosexuality being a sin, they have made homosexual a category of humanity. And I'm going to show you the implications of this. They are following through on their madness. We're going to see a couple of other things that shows you they are following through on their madness. Some of the things that are springing out of this are unbelievable. It's close to lunacy. But when you open the door, you have to be consistent. I'm going to tell you, this thing, if the world lasts long enough, will lead to people getting married to their dogs.
Yeah, that's right.
Because the basis of this is not procreation. It's not that you can have children. It's that you can be with the one that you love. People are making the claims that they really love their dogs. If it's all about love, it's going to follow through logically. I predict. Because in their lunacy, they tend to be consistent. Mr. Cameron from England and your erstwhile president, the gay marriage vote is a milestone for gay rights. This was a news article in the British newspaper, The Guardian, I think it was. But here is a comment of this person who wrote this article. It says, It's nice to know after yesterday's vote that we are allowed to come up to the front of the church and stand by the altar. There remains the problem of the opt-out. Individual churches can opt out of gay marriage on grounds of religious conscience. Does this mean that if we get married, we are going to have to shop our equal love around to various churches until we find a priest who is willing to allow it to be equal? That isn't really equal, is it? But notice his punchline at the bottom. But we feel more confident now that both Cameron and Obama are on our side. Two of the biggest boys in the playground. Go get them, lads. That is what they're commenting. In other words, you know that in England they had something called a civil union. And in this civil union, homosexuals had the same exact rights as married people. Once you entered into the civil union, you could have inheritance and equal sharing and all the rest of it, just like in marriage. They were not satisfied. They demanded marriage. It had to be marriage because they said it's not equality until we have the same exact word, marriage. It's not an attempt for them to have the privileges of marriage because they had it already. It's an attempt to destroy the meaning of marriage. And they got it. Now, this has so many potential implications. We don't have time to talk about it this evening. But this fellow is raising the question. Yes, well, we are equal in marriage. What's the next step? We got marriage. What's the next step? The next step is that there are some churches that can say we won't marry you. That's not really equal, is it? Can we get the next target? The next target, if marriage, if we are to be absolutely equal, then no church can say we will not marry homosexuals. Don't think it's not going to affect you. Don't think that because you don't practice it, it's not going to affect you. It's going to come to the place where it affects every one of us in some way or the other. As long as it continues to grow at the same rate that it is growing at. Here we find it already in Denmark. Gay Danish couples win the right to marry in church. The Danish court has ruled that no church in Denmark can opt out. Any homosexual couple can go to any church in Denmark, Adventist, Baptist, Catholic, and require them to marry them, and you have to do it by law. The only option you have is that if you, the minister, don't want to do it, then you can opt out, but your superior has to find somebody who will do it in your place. So already in Denmark, individual churches don't have the right to opt out. And you know how it goes in the world, right? We all like to be progressive and we don't like to be backward. So where Denmark goes, you'll see that our country is following pretty rapidly. And the same thing, you know, people smell what is happening. Will gay rights infringe on religious liberty? Absolutely. Some people have seen marriage equality really spells marriage extinction. And we don't have the time to discuss why, but people are seeing what is happening. Of course, the question, gay marriage, then group marriage. Yes, because why? Because the basis of gay marriage, the basis of marriage by this definition is that two people love each other. So what if three love each other? What if four love each other, since that is the basis of it? Marriage has always been on the basis of raising a family, rearing your children in a secure environment. It has not always worked perfectly. You have divorce and that kind of thing, but that has been the basis of marriage. It has been to stabilize society and to ensure the kind of environment that brings up stable citizens. But now they have redefined the meaning of marriage to simply be a transaction you enter into because you have affection for one another. Therefore, there's no logical reason to limit it to two people. Furthermore, since marriage, things like incest have been forbidden because, you know, when a man and a woman has a child, if you are brother and sister or close relatives, then the child is likely to have some genetic weaknesses. Why can't two brothers now marry each other? Because two men can't have a child. Or why can't two sisters marry each other? Because they can't have children. So it opens the doors to questions. You know, they have been saying that the legal fraternity is going to have a ball, because there are so many perverted and weird things that come into the picture, and if you have opened the door here, you can't logically close it there. And I think that is why the United States Supreme Court, these judges who are a little older, are thinking carefully about what they're doing, right? But I suspect public opinion and the pressure from the people with money is going to carry the day. But there are all these implications. When they say it's going to be a different world, it is going to be a different world. It's going to be a crazy world. Here, this man says, he warns that it could create a nationwide assault on religion, and it has all that potential, and it will. When you have the time, go on the internet if you can and look at some of the forums, and I'll tell you something. Look at some of those discussions between homosexuals and other people, or atheists and other people, and you will find that there is vile language. I have not found one single forum where some of these people speak in a restrained way. They hate religion, and they hate Christians, and they are rejoicing that now the foot is on the other, the shoe is on the other foot, and we are going to get what's coming to us. That's the kind of mood that you see happening there. So it's going to create an assault on religion, and it has already started. The Catholic Church kind of recognizes what is happening, and it says that it may have to get out of the wedding business if the UK backs gay marriage. Why? Because they anticipate that there are going to be a lot of lawsuits. Because if homosexuals would like to get married in the church and they refuse to marry them, then they're going to be hit with a lawsuit. It's not just that you'll have a slap on the wrist. There are going to be lawsuits, and a lot of money is going to have to be paid. It's happening already. So the Catholic Church has made this comment, and I think that's probably true of every church. Already, Brother Ken showed this to me this morning. It's interesting. How long ago did they make it all right for homosexuals to go into the military here? Has it a year yet? In last year alone, the statistics, there were 26,000 gay assaults in the military. Last year alone, 26,000 in the military alone. Okay? So they have opened the door to something they don't know what they are doing. And those who dare to resist are being persecuted. Like I said, people have been arrested, have been fined thousands of dollars. This is an Adventist teacher in England. It's close to us, right? This man has been teaching for quite a few years, but he was asked by his students, what do you think about homosexuality? And he gave them his opinion, and the students were quite happy. But there was an assistant teacher sitting in the classroom, went and reported him. When he was reported because his opinion was negative towards homosexuality, he was suspended for 2 years. Took the case to court, and he lost the case. They said that somebody with those opinions about homosexuality is not fit to teach young people. And so he not only lost his job, he has lost his profession. He cannot teach in England anymore, because he does not agree with homosexuality. Here's another teacher in Canada. He teaches was teaching at a college. You know what he did? In his own private time, he wrote a letter to the newspaper expressing the opinion that homosexuality was wrong. He was suspended from his job, and when he went before the court said, the court upheld the suspension. I think he's no longer working there anymore. The court upheld the suspension because they said that his views, somebody working in the public should not express such views. Something like that. But anyway, the point is that this was in Canada. And in Canada especially, the situation is very, very extreme. The persecutions that have taken place in Canada, your neighbor next door, are amazing for a country that is supposed to be democratic and modern and free speech. Well, Hawaii, these are two lesbians who they went to this bed and breakfast in Hawaii, wanted to stay overnight. The person is a Christian, said, I can't put you up, I can't allow you to stay because, you know, I'm a Christian, it's against my principles. So of course, they're not satisfied to go and find somewhere else. So they sue, and the judge rules in favor And of course, the person who owns the bed and breakfast has money. And most of you know about this. This is in Washington here. This poor little lady sells flowers. She was asked to cater for a gay wedding. She says, I can't because I am a Christian. They took her to court. I don't know how much she was sued, but she lost the case. And now the state itself is suing this lady. That's the end of her business. That's the end of her trading. California, those of you who live there, if you try to convert a gay person, you are going against the law. There's a ban on the gay conversion therapy. You are not supposed to try to convert somebody who is a homosexual, even if it's your child. That's illegal in California. Here you hear the roar of the dragon, the teeth that is behind all of this. Countries that ban homosexuality risk losing aid, warns David Cameron. I think this is Cameron along with who was that? The Australian Prime Minister Stephen Harper, when he was Prime Minister. But you see, they're not shy about stating. Oh, it was a Canadian Prime Minister. Yeah, they're not shy about stating their purpose. Countries like Jamaica, the Caribbean countries, the African countries, where you still have a ban on homosexuality. It's illegal in our country. If two men are caught sodomizing each other, theoretically, they can be arrested, they can be put in prison. It doesn't happen very often because people don't go and peep in your window and see what is happening. But of course, it safeguards the country against these people coming out in public and being too barefaced. But here, these people, I don't know what is wrong, why they can't mind their business and live your own life. They are intruding their perversion upon all countries. Countries that ban this thing, they risk losing aid. These developed countries, if you saw the list that was there, these are the rich countries of the world. I know what they are because when I need to travel from country to country, I often go and look at the list of countries that don't need a visa. And that list of countries that have all passed homosexual marriage, they are the countries that they can travel back and forth freely. Poor little me from my little backward country. Any of those countries I want to go to, I have to get a visa. I can be rejected. But these are the wealthier countries, and they are the ones that are in the forefront of this. It's amazing because I remember what the Bible says in Ezekiel 16 there. This was the pride of thy sister Sodom. Pride. Fullness of bread and abundance of idleness. Therefore they committed abominations before me. The Bible is not wrong. So they say no aid for those who still ban homosexuality. And here's the poor Dominican representative to the United Nations. He's telling his country that they may be forced to change their position on homosexuality in order to get aid. And of course, there's an article in Time World, the most homophobic place on earth. Make a guess where that is. Huh? Jamaica. Yeah. They put this article in Time World. It's not really true. We can't hold a candle to the Islamic countries, but that's a way of putting pressure, turning the screws to make sure that we bend, because that's a part of the propaganda machine. A.K. Green, a Pentecostal minister in Sweden, was sentenced to a month in prison for referring to homosexual practice in a sermon as a horrible, cancerous tumor in the body of society. The public prosecutor commented, collecting Bible verses on this topic as he does makes this hate speech. So simply quoting the Bible is hate speech if you quote it with relation to homosexuality in certain countries. In England, Adrian Smith was demoted, had his salary cut by 40% because he said gay weddings in churches would be an equality too far. He wrote these 4 words outside work time on his personal Facebook page, which was not visible to the general public. Somebody saw it, reported him. He was demoted and had his salary cut by 40%. If that is not persecution for your religious beliefs, I don't know what is.
What does he do?
He wrote something on his Facebook page. Peter and Hazel Mary Bulwell, they were ordered to pay £3,600 because they had a policy at their bed and breakfast of only allowing married couples to share a double bed. This lady, Lillian Laddell, she's a registrar at Islington. She was pushed out of her job because she asked her managers to accommodate her belief that marriage is the union of one man to one woman. Dr. Angela McCaskill is a deaf diversity officer at a university in America. She was suspended because she signed a petition saying voters should decide whether marriage should be redefined. You're not even free to express your opinion if it goes against the popular tide. Well, this is a singer, but I just put that in there. One day she got up and made some comments, anti-homosexual comments. What it says is that immediately at least 10 clubs and music halls have cancelled concerts by Michelle Shocked, that's her name, since she went on a anti-gay tirade during a show in San Francisco on Saturday night. She can't, I tell you, this is very similar to the idea of not being able to buy or sell, not being able to work, simply because you hold an opinion. This is a Jamaican singer, dancehall artist, and he, you know, in Jamaica, they like to, especially people from the dancehalls and the ghettos, they like to talk against homosexuality. So he sang some songs against homosexuality. All his jobs dried up, all his work dried up, can't get any jobs. And he asked gays for forgiveness. Now you have to be a Jamaican to understand this, because you see these guys, they are the most arrogant and boastful. They don't bow to anybody. They don't bow. These Rasta type singers, they don't bow. This guy has to come and ask for forgiveness, and he puts it on YouTube and he says, please, I am begging you, do not have me up for some songs I wrote a long time ago. And he was interviewed on television in Jamaica, and the interviewer said, so Benny man, what do you have to say to the people who say you have bowed? He says, bowed? Well, all I have to say to all of you, I want you to try it and see what happens. Right? In other words, when it touches your pocket, because he could not get any work, he says, when I go to New York and I want to get the park there to hold a concert, he says, the man I have to talk to is married to a man. And the man says, Beanie man, but those songs that you are singing, he said, if I wanted to work, I had to change my attitude. And immediately he put the apology out. In 2 weeks, he had a big concert in New York with Boys to Men and some of these big singers. And he was back in the limelight. So, the only people who can stand up for their consciences when their livelihood is threatened are true Christians. The ordinary person might run up his mouth. And I'm going to tell you, you can look at the world today and see that a lot of people are opposed to this and a lot of people are for it. And you think, well, I'm in the same group here with a lot of people who are not Christians. This can't really divide the world. But I'm going to tell you, when it comes down to the crunch, whether this issue or the Sabbath Sunday issue, the only people who will stand are the people who have Christ living in them. Whether it's this issue or the Sabbath Sunday issue, whenever it comes, I'm going to tell you, all these millions of Adventists, the only people who will stand are the people in whom Christ is living. When you touch a man's bread, when you know you can't pay the mortgage, your children need to eat, when you know that and you're standing for a religious idea, and everybody's trying to persuade you that it's fanaticism, you have many reasons to suddenly recognize that you made a mistake. Only if Jesus is in you, that's the only way you can stand. And this thing has brought that home to me. This thing has brought that home to me. Canada steamrolls religious freedom, the homosexual agenda. On January 10, the Saskatchewan Court of Appeals in Canada released an opinion holding that marriage commissioners in Canada could not refuse to perform same-sex marriage ceremonies on the grounds that doing so would violate their religious beliefs. Now, who are marriage commissioners? Every minister who is licensed to perform weddings. It's not just the justices of the peace and the marriage registrars. Every minister who is licensed to perform a marriage is licensed by the state. is a marriage commissioner. So, according to Canada, nobody who has a marriage license can refuse to perform a marriage on the basis that it's homosexual and it's against your conscience. So it will be interesting to see what happens here. What I'm trying to say to you is that when it happens in one place, it won't be long before it follows every other place. This man in Canada put out 2 tracts asking Canadians, please don't allow homosexuality to take over the schools. And he was pointing out what it means. Look, they took, homosexuals took him to court. He was charged $7,500. It was labeled as hate speech for putting out 2 tracts. It may not be here yet to that degree, but it's frightening to see what is happening in the world. I believe Europe represents the beast, but I believe the 2-horned beast, this is my personal opinion, the 2-horned beast represents America, Canada. 2 horns. Well, we say the 2 horns represent civil and religious liberty. But I think probably there's another meaning to it too, because horns always represented minor kingdoms within a broader empire. And America and Canada are so closely associated together. I'm thinking the 2 horns there may have another implication, because America and Canada are very close in terms of your system of government and the things that you value. The Supreme Court, that's the one in Canada, the Supreme Court found, however, that with regards to hate speech, the distinction between sin and the sinner no longer applies. No longer can Christians give the defense before courts that one loves the sinner but hates the sin. In other words, if you put out a tract or you make statements against homosexuality, it's automatically regarded that you're attacking the individual. And you can't make the excuse that you're not talking about the person. It's a sin you're dealing with. Another man in Quebec fined $12,000 for homophobic remarks. We don't have the time to read the article, but one of these homosexuals went through a stop sign apparently and drove dangerously down the street and endangered a boy's life. The father went to see them and apparently called them, a homosexual couple, he called them faggots. So they took him to court. They've been awarded $12,000. The man has been sued, fined $12,000 for these homophobic remarks. This religious group in Canada was receiving some aid from the government to help countries in Africa. They found out that this group is against homosexuality, and so they have stopped funding pending investigation. Ben Carson, most of us know Ben Carson. I've heard of Ben Carson. Great guy. But Ben Carson made the mistake not so long ago of comparing homosexuality to incest and bestiality. What he said something like he believes that it's wrong, just as how he believes that bestiality and incest is wrong. Immediately there were cries of outrage. He was supposed to give the graduation speech at the university where he works. The students rose up and demanded that he be withdrawn, and so he had to back away from doing that. But now he had to apologize for his remarks. Why? What does that GOP mean? What does GOP mean?
Grand Old Party.
Huh?
Grand Old Party.
Grand Old Party. Okay, which one is that? Okay, so apparently poor Ben Carson has aspirations to be in politics. And he can't afford to have this public opinion so fiercely against him because he has political aspirations. So Ben Carson has to apologize for his remarks about gay marriage. And yet Ben Carson is a person we all have a lot of respect for. And he's a person of integrity. But when you begin to go into a certain arena, public opinion really controls a lot of what you do. And that's a frightening thought. I'm unhappy to see him there. Australia, Human Rights Commission member pressured into resigning after supporting traditional marriage. This man, Professor Kurovilla George, had been part of a group of 150 medical professionals who submitted to the inquiry that the evidence is overwhelming. The evidence is clear that children who grew up in a family with a mother and father are better off in all parameters than children without. There were immediate calls for his resignation. What? The man said, along with another group of doctors, that if children grew up with a mother and father, they grow up better in all areas than children who grew up without both parents. Immediately there are calls for his resignation. Can you believe?
Yeah.
And he eventually had to resign. Karen Phelps, the former national president of the Australian Medical Association, said the group of doctors who go under the name Doctors for the Family should hang their heads in shame, and that Professor George's position on the board of the Human Rights Commission should be reviewed. And she has had her wish. She has had to resign, because he says that it's better for children to have a mother and a father, obviously, compared to having two mothers or two fathers. You can't express your opinion. I'm showing you this kaleidoscope from different countries because I want you to see that it's something that is not just America. It's a whole planet. It's a whole world gone mad. You can't even express an opinion to say, I think it is better this way. In some countries, immediately, you're losing your job. Lech Walesa, most of us will remember, he was the hero of Poland during the time when the Berlin Wall fell down. He was the leader of the Solidarity trade union movement that helped to bring down communism in Poland. He's a big hero. Well, he made some remarks where he says that when it comes to politics, he thinks homosexuals should sit at the back or be in the next room. Wow. They say he has irreparably harmed his legacy, and nobody should ask him to give any public speeches again after this. So, Ottawa Comic Shop pulls books. Many comic shop books have pulled this Superman comics, because the latest Superman comic is written by a guy named Scott Card, who is anti-homosexual marriage. How dare DC Comics get this guy to write the comic? There's a page on the internet asking for petitions to demand that DC Comics fire Scott Card. Why? Because he doesn't agree with the gay lifestyle. He can't work. He can't get a job. DC Comics must fire him. And the comic shop books, not just in Ottawa, many places are refusing to carry the comic unless they fire the guy. And because he has an opinion, he mustn't work. UK MPs hear the case of Christian teacher disciplined for refusing to read pro-gay penguin book to class. This book is called Tango Makes Three. It's about two homosexual penguins who raise a baby penguin. It's a part of the recommended reading for the children. This teacher started reading the book, recognized that it was about two homosexual penguins, and stopped reading it, put it away. 2 days later, she's called into the principal's office for stopping reading the book, and she's questioned, and she says, I don't agree with it, so I don't read it. Now she is before the MPs, the members of parliament. Her case is being heard before the MPs because she stopped reading a homosexual book to her little children. This is the kind of lunacy that prevails in the world, that this thing is bringing into the world, and children are being brainwashed. In 2002, the Canadian Supreme Court ruled that neither parents nor school boards could prevent public school children, even in kindergarten and first grade, from being instructed in the classroom about the acceptability of homosexual relations. And this is what is coming to America, undoubtedly. It's already in California in some places. The California Department of Education adds dozens of gay, transgender titles to the recommended reading list for children in schools. You can't do anything about it. I don't know if any of you have children in schools or they are homeschooled, but I'm telling you, it has been tested by law in several cases, and it has been decided parents don't have the right to be told what their children are being taught. Parents don't have the right to be told if today they are going to be teaching about the acceptability of homosexuality. Parents don't have the right to ask. Your children are not yours, they belong to the state, and you don't have the right to determine what they learn. That has been demonstrated over and over. Here are some of the books that they are using with the children. And these are primarily in England, but many of them are being used here as well. This one is King and King, about two homosexual kings who marry each other. This one is saying, what a wonderful prince, what a wonderful prince. Here they are getting married. Here they are kissing each other. The wedding was very special. The queen even shed a tear or two. I mean, this is what is being taught to children. So what do you expect of the next generation? If God doesn't intervene, here's another one. Daddy, Papa, and me. Now, Daddy and Papa are tucked in tight. I kiss them both and say, night, night. Mommy never told me, and it's about this little girl and how she has two moms. Mommy never told me that it was the same to have two mommies. I've got a cat and two dogs. I've got two moms, and this is me. Daddy's roommate. Mommy and Daddy had a divorce last year. Now there's somebody new at Daddy's house. Daddy and his new roommate, Frank, live together, sleep together. Being gay is just one more kind of love. These are the books that the children are being given.
Next to one of the kids.
Yeah. And of course, I mean, I used to read a lot of comics when I was younger, before I had any sense. But you know, here you find that one of the heroes of the young people, Batwoman, she comes back in the latest comic as a lesbian. Why? Because they say they're just trying to keep up with the mood of society. So, what I'm really saying is that there's hardly any way that you can prevent the young people from being infected to the place where the next generation thinks you're a fool if you don't agree with it. And the result is total confusion. Pedophilia is a sexual orientation on a California bill. Alright? Same thing is happening in Greece. Pedophilia as a disability. Greece is in an uproar over allowing pedophiles and kleptomaniacs special status. It's inevitable. If you say people are born homosexuals, they're born kleptomaniacs.
That's right.
How do you know they're not born pedophiles? Some men love little children. Some people have an uncontrollable desire to steal things. That's what kleptomania is. Okay. Now that they have said homosexuality is an inborn thing, it's genetic, and you mustn't discriminate against them. Pedophiles, kleptomaniacs have the same, can make the same case. What I'm saying is that one thing leads to another, and there's no end to the lunacy once you go down a certain road. Arizona. You have to laugh at this. The bathroom bill. They have now made the restroom in this particular city council. They've made the bathrooms no longer male and female, but the bathroom is open. It's unisex that the men can go straight in. Why? You have to look at the why to really understand why. It was necessary to protect the men who are confused about their sexuality and think that they are women. Because some men think they are women, and to protect these men, they now make the women's bathroom available for men, so any man can walk in the women's bathroom and say that he thinks he's a woman. Dear God, help us. Right. And this is actually happening here in Arizona. Experts teach students how to view porn. Government-approved group tells UK teachers. And of course they say, school pupils should be taught not all porn is bad, advise experts. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. Now this one, you really have to see this to believe this. Let me tell you what this is. It's not a law, but California is considering it. And the very fact that it is considering it is an evidence of, I don't know what to call it. Lunacy is too generous a word. Now, I don't know if it's everywhere, but in California at least, if two people get married and they've been trying to have a child for a year or two and they can't have a child, then there's insurance to cover them. You can get insurance to cover them so that they can then go to the doctor or whatever it takes to get artificial insemination or something, right? Now that marriage is being defined as not between man and a woman, but also between man and woman and woman, the same insurance They are considering giving the same insurance to gays for gay infertility, so that if two homosexual men have been trying for a year to have a child and they can't have a child, they can get insurance because they have been trying for a year. Or two homosexual women. Now, if that is not the height of lunacy, I don't know what is. They have not passed this law, but the fact that they are even considering it tells you that somebody has lost their mind. You know, but it's a kind of madness that comes in because you redefine marriage, right? The same privileges that apply to a heterosexual couple, logically you're going to give them to a homosexual couple. In England right now there's a furor because they are saying, okay, the homosexuals had civil union and they demanded marriage and now they got married. So many of the heterosexuals now are demanding civil union. They say we also need to have civil union. So people who are just shacking up, man and woman, they're saying we want civil unions as well. So that's another headache for the British government to try to bring in those the civil union for heterosexual couples. They are discussing it, so I don't know what will come out of it. Here's a little girl who's actually a boy. His name is Coy Mattis. When he was eight months old, his mother said he started playing with dolls and liked to put on girls' dresses. So she took him to the doctor. The doctor said, it's a little girl trapped in a boy's body. So they started putting dresses on this little boy and buying and treating him like a girl. He started going to school with a dress and, you know, referring to himself as a girl. Now he's 6 years old and the teachers say, well, Coy, you can't use the girls' bathroom anymore. You can use the teacher's bathroom or the nurse's bathroom. Because of course he has a boy's equipment. So it's kind of funny for him to be using the girl's bathroom. And he can't use the boy's bathroom because he's dressed like a girl. So they say use the teacher's bathroom. And these lunatic parents are suing the school. Now if some crazy doctor tells me that my little boy is a girl trapped in a boy's body, if some crazy doctor tells me this, I'll tell him goodbye and I'll go home and I'll tell my little boy that he's a boy. And I'll make him understand what he is, because that's my duty as a parent. But in this atmosphere of the world today where gender is as fluid as water, and it means nothing because it does not, I mean, they have so confused God's creation that this poor little child now is so confused about what it is. And they have taken the school to court, and heaven knows the school is probably going to lose the case. I don't know what is going to happen, but this is the kind of madness that is happening, and it's an indicator of where the world is going. Of course, the US pediatricians, with their experts, back gay marriage and adoption rights. So it's just, they say they see no evidence that a child who grows up with homosexual parents is any less balanced than children who grew up with heterosexual parents. But of course, when they say no less balanced, they don't consider growing up and becoming a homosexual unbalanced. Yeah. And not surprisingly, many of the children who grew up in these gay adopted families become the same thing like the people they grew up with, you know. But they don't consider that anything unusual, so that's their opinion. And of course, in Canada, it's the norm. In Quebec, in Germany, they are strengthening the right to do that. The pity is that in the religious world there's a lot of misrepresentation. Ministers like this one are saying that we are misinterpreting the Bible. I don't see how you can interpret it any other way. But it's interesting to see how they explain some of these verses. It makes you want to weep. Because you can't believe that people who claim to be Christians could be so dishonest. This article tells you that in America, 47% of the population is in favor of homosexual marriage, but among Catholics, it's 54%. So actually, whatever the official position of the church, Catholics on the whole are majority in favor of it. Here's this crazy church in North Carolina. They have stopped all weddings. What are they waiting for? They won't perform any more weddings. Why? because they are sympathizing with the homosexual movement. Until homosexuals have equal rights to marriage, they will not hold any more weddings in their church. This was in the news this week. Minneapolis church celebrates gay marriage bill with rainbow communion bread. And of course, if you never heard about this, your mouth will drop wide open. You never heard of the Queen James Version? You can buy it on Amazon for $35. It's a Bible written especially for the homosexual movement. Of course, it has a rainbow logo. It's called the Queen James Version. It's exactly like the King James Version, but the 8 verses in it that speak against homosexuality have all been changed. Maybe in a few years, this will be the Bible that is preferred by most churches. Definitely, this Bible does not contain hate speech by the definition of the governments. So I don't know what will be the outcome of this, but it's almost like the ultimate blasphemy. They have written, the Bible warns against changing the word of God, but whoever is involved in this, because the thing is that there's no, it's just there, it's on Amazon, it's $35, you can get it by nicely bound and everything, but there's no credit as to who printed this Bible. You don't know who printed it. But it flies in the face of God. It has deliberately gone ahead and changed the word of God. And it's exactly what the movement, the homosexual movement, wanted. What should be our response? I'm going back to that statement I made a little earlier on, and then I'm going to sit down. I want you to consider what we see here. Because ultimately, the question is, what does this do to you? What does it say to you? And what response do you give to this? Vice is a monster. Vice is evil. And evil is a monster of such fearful mien. It has such an ugly face. As to be hated needs but to be seen. You only need to look at it to hate it. But seen too oft, familiar with her face. You see too often, you get familiar with the thing. We first endure, then we pity, then we embrace. God forbid that anybody here should become so familiar with this particular vice. But I'm telling you, it's in your face every day. And it's going to become more pervasive. If they legalize homosexual marriage here in America, the advertisements will change, the labels will change, the clothing will change, the church services will change. It's going to be in your face constantly. You have to make a choice to endure, then pity, then embrace, or to stand up and resist it. When I say resist, I don't mean politically. I don't mean pick up a gun and go out and do something. I mean, as a Christian, you don't compromise with what God says. God says it is wrong, it is wrong. And when you're preaching the gospel and telling people that they need to be saved from sin, this abominable thing that is in your face, let them know. Well, I know that Jamaica, we still have a lot more freedom to talk on this issue because it's still illegal there. Our last Prime Minister, our present Prime Minister, and during the last election, she got up and she says they're going to review the law. I think that's why she won the election by a landslide. Because I've heard rumors that there was some money pumped into the election campaign by the some homosexual group. But it's still illegal there. But I myself and our group in Jamaica, along with the things that we are preaching concerning righteousness by faith, along with the truth about the Godhead, we're not backing away from this because we want to make people know what is happening and what it means. And each one of us has to make a determination for himself how important you think this is, how important you think this is. But I want to encourage you to give it some consideration and some prayer, because it's not an inconsequential thing. And it's not something that is going away, it's not receding, it is coming at us full face and full speed. We're not going to be able to avoid it. The only way we can avoid it is by quenching our consciences and ignoring the world that we live in. And I don't think that is the option God wants us to have or to take. So, Anyway, I want to thank you for your patience and listening so attentively. I know that we're all a little tired. It's Friday evening and we want to get home, so I'm going to invite you to just bow with me and we give thanks before we separate.